Good morning. On this bowl of Question Crunch, we have the host of All Things Relative podcast, Samboy. He's here to answer questions regarding a wide range of racial issues that surround our everyday life, from music to comic books to the overwhelming streams of social media we voluntarily drown ourselves in. I like to just dive right into the conversation naturally, organically. And listening to your podcast, I hear you do the same thing because it always just starts up right in a conversation. And one of my favorite ones when you started with saying about the recording logo to make sure you're okay.
Yeah. That's about yeah. Because the last couple of ones that I've done, the last couple of episodes I did were through. We used a couple of different other video conference ones or whatever, and it's like a couple of times I forget to start recording, or so sometimes you just actually end up catching stuff. You're 15 minutes into a conversation, you forget, and you're like, damn, that was all gold, and then you start again, and then that was actually something that came out of that. So yeah, and it's just like those are moments that you can't really write, so you just kind of you just kind of let it flow.
I know exactly how I feel. One of my favorite things was when you did say, there's that icon that says the recording icon, and I was like, yep, yes, it is.
Yeah, on one of these. Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, you go for it. I think we're recording. I like it starting right here. This is good conversation, just us talking.
No, I love it because I forget which app it is. It's I don't think it's Zoom because I barely use that. But one of the apps, like they tell you, hey, avoid legal issues by telling people they're being recorded.
I'm pretty sure it's this one. I think we have like a heads up thing.
Probably on your end. Yeah.
So I want to talk about your podcast.
Okay.
It's all relative. I loved it. I love it. I love listening to it. One of my favorite things, and I recently listened to the one where you're talking about COVID-19 and conspiracies.
Yes.
And that was an interesting one, and I think it opened my eyes on what is meant by it's all relative. Because you and your guest were talking about COVID and conspiracies, and your guest was kind of frustrating me. It was because he was talking about hospitals getting money for talking about more COVID cases, and I was just like, no, that's not. Come on. Or like just the conspiracies around COVID, and then you would come up and explaining that that's not a thing, and explaining the details behind the subject or where people are getting this idea. And I thought that was really cool, seeing the two sides of a conversation, having a conversation about it.
Yeah.
What started It's all relative?
So it's all relative. Obviously that phrase just means, you got to take everything on a case by case basis, or that context is critical. That after a while, I just kind of realized that was kind of the general framework that I operated in. So just kind of, observing the way that I think and the way that I engage with others. And then as far as like, I want to develop a platform or a space where I can have these conversations and talk about things in the way that I want, was probably like around 2015, 2016 time. And when I was thinking about it, it specifically comes from like discovering Patrice O'Neal through Opie and Anthony. Which, for those that don't know, Patrice O'Neal was a comic. He was considered a quote unquote like a comic's favorite comic and whatnot, which means he was known very much in the scene and not much in the mainstream. And then excuse me, Opie and Anthony were two like shock jock radio guys who were like followed in the they were like the generation after Stern. To put that in context for people, but they were shock jocks, and they would have all the edgiest people, especially from like comedy and entertainment media, come in and just really spit for real, how they really felt. It wasn't like a regular like interviews. And anyway, and it's just like, even listening to those, when I would disagree with them, I was like, damn, at least it's a space where they can be candid, where people can be vulnerable, even if their views seem very despicable or off center and whatnot. And then it also helped me to realize how much of my own opinions and point of view were not as mainstream as I thought. So it was kind of like a wake up call to me, like, hey, you don't really fit in. You're only going to be able to fit in or get along so much. So you're better off trying to lean into these other parts, saying they make you a little less quote unquote digestible. But I would say like yeah, like in the like after discovering Patrice O'Neill and Opie and Anthony 2015, 2016, that was like okay, I need my own platform and my own space and whatever to do my thing. And so I just barely begun this back in September 2019. So it hasn't even been it's been barely just over 6 months, and it's everywhere. It's on it's on Facebook, all the streaming platforms, Instagram, etc. Um, but that's when it started, and I'm kind of surprised at how much attention it's kind of getting and how it's continuing to spread, bit by bit, you
I
know.
I I totally dig that. A lot of times when I've talked to people about that kind of concept is, and I've been using this a lot more lately, using the example of the anglerfish.
Mm.
And it's odd. It's not even the anglerfish, and it's not specifically anglerfish because it's. I'm not even talking about the physical features of the anglerfish. I talk about as in when someone says, "Oh, well, everything happens for a reason," and I'm like,
Oh.
"Really? Like the anglerfish? Like everything happens for a reason? Like the anglerfish is just swimming around and they have like an end goal, and they're like, oh man, I'm glad that this water is in a place where I need it to be. What the fuck?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've done that so many times where I'm saying like when because like I've gotten addicted to watching rapture videos of crazy people on YouTube, and
Mm.
and I always think about like in their videos they always say the rapture happens, the end of the world happens, a lot of people get taken, and the rest of us suffer. I'm like, then
Mm.
why the fuck does the anglerfish even exist if this world is just going to be doomed?
It Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, and you can apply that same question to really any phase of this stuff. It's like,
Any
wait a
phase.
minute, any phase of it, it's like, wait a minute, why does there need to be a New Testament if everything in the Old Testament was right? You know what I'm saying? Or like, if this stuff was so important, if this stuff was so true to like the human condition expressed in life, why does it need to be written down in the first place? Why is it not
Yeah.
something that can just be injected into people's minds? If you have
there's a
to,
whole there's a whole lot of polar bears just roaming the world, and they don't know anything about the New Testament.
Yeah, seriously, and it's basic stuff. And sometimes when you talk to certain people, you can realize that they just never had somebody present these simple possibilities to them. And then, hopefully you're able to distinguish them from the people who have heard these things, but they've really bought into the shit. Whether they may actually really believe in it or not, but in any case, at the end of the day, they're maintaining the infrastructure because they see some benefit to them. Through it. Whether it is just genuinely keeping their particular faith, or if it's just a grift or a way to control, saying the masses and whatnot. But I feel like more and more people, obviously, this has been going on for decades. Even before Nietzsche declared that we God is dead and we killed him. It's not that people stop being religious or people stop being spiritual. It's just that now, even as a religious spiritual person, you're confronted with certain questions of, okay, why did World War I happen? Why did, what I'm saying? Why were people able to do all these different genocides, not just the Holocaust, but plenty of other ones that happened in different countries at the same time? Um, yeah, it's yeah. You were gonna say something though?
Oh no, I was enjoying what you were saying.
Yeah, okay, yeah. No,
uh,
that's my feelings on that. We're all just, it's such a daunting thought to be like, yeah, we're just kind of navigating this shit on our own. But I realize that like, but it's the thing is, it's starting to happen with every institution. You know what I'm saying? It's happened with our
mhm.
churches. It's happened with almost every level of politicians. You know what I'm saying? Local businesses, even like nonprofits and charities and stuff. You know what I'm saying? As we keep seeing people's masks behind people's masks and facades and shit. Um,
It's funny that you bring that up because that was one of my questions. I liked it because
yeah,
you
I
told me
remember.
that
Yeah, it is.
earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You told me that last night, and I really wanted you to elaborate. So I'm like, yes, cool, natural, organic. So
Yeah.
continue. A lot of folks' illusions and masks falling off.
Yeah, so a lot of folks' illusions are falling with the masks. Essentially, in this system, we are said that look, these are your rights, these are your privileges, these are the blah blah blah. And the main thing that we're given as Yankees, as United States citizens, right, is our ability to consume and this facade of choice. You have 500 different Pringles choices, 300 different styles of toothbrush, 300, saying whatever the fuck, right? All the while, your genuine rights and liberties and privacy is slowly being taken away from you, right? But a lot of people are willing to go along with that because it's like, well, hey, I'm still able to upgrade my microwave. I'm still able to get, saying new trinkets. I'm able to, saying keep going to the gym and taking my partner out to restaurants and doing the things else, blah, 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 right? So it seems like a fair compromise. But now that people are, in one hand, desperate, saying because of like the pandemic and because of the economic fallout and everything, um, or they've really just become cynical about the system. Now they're kind of like, well, if I'm not even getting money out of this arrangement anymore, then what the hell am I maintaining this mask for? What the hell am I maintaining this performance for? And so it's just a lot more people realizing that, hey, their leash was not as tight or as short as they were taught to believe.
That's pretty neat. Why am I doing this performance if you're not even going to keep me comfortable?
Exactly. That was the only thing y'all were offering me, that I was going to have some sense of comfort. I was going to have some degree of choice in consumption. I had some entertainment or whatever. And even though I may criticize it a bunch, I still go back to it day after day after day. But then you take away, saying the little bit of my ability to even indulge in these things. Then it's like no holds bar. And the thing is, the powers that be, they recognize this. They know that, which is why with the exception of like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, like really, really top tier motherfuckers, even people who have like $100 million and everything are hurting a bit. You know what I'm saying? Because they see that first of all, a lot of that income is not going to come back. But even if it did, the jobs and stuff did come back, people's devotion is definitely not coming back. Everybody, people are finally seeing that a lot of their heroes. This is from like a JPEG Mafia album. He's a rap artist called "All My Heroes Are Cornballs," and I kind of laughed when I first heard it, and then I started thinking about like the concept of hero worship and idolatry and idols and everything, and it's just like kind of seeing that it's a recognition that even the people you worship and the people you learn so much from are still fallible humans, and at any point in time can be a disappointment to themselves. So expect them to disappoint you as well. You know. So
That's pretty good. And what's that song? Because I want to check it out.
the song and the album are called
Uh-huh.
"All My Heroes Are Cornballs."
Okay.
Yeah, and the artist is JPEG Mafia.
I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I'm not really too musically hip.
Hey man, it's all good, bro. And the thing is, it's just like, even as somebody who makes music and loves music, I'm not able to keep up with it. I'm not as I understand, because there's always so much more shit. There's I mean, it was always going to be impossible to listen to all the stuff, but now it's just like, now it just seems so completely insurmountable to even bother trying to keep up with all shit. So yeah, so don't feel
At,
bad.
fir- at first, there was a facade of a hope that you could, and now it's like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
If if people can share a thing and I like a thing and I have time to click a thing, I'll check it out.
Yeah, yeah. I saw a stat. I saw a graphic the other day that shocked me, because, of course, we know that streaming music has taken over, or just streaming in general is the next wave. But I
Hmm.
didn't realize that people weren't downloading shit like at all. Like, downloading is almost gone the way of CDs. Like, looking at these numbers, and I was just like,
Wow.
I was like, really? Because like, and I try not to use myself in this example, because I don't know what the exact name for it is, but I'm a disloyal consumer.
Hmm.
It's like, I will drop your shit. I will drop your shit buying your stuff at the drop of at a moment's notice, and completely forget about you. Like, so I am not. It's like, I am not. I'm one of the like uh shit. What's the name? An outlier. I'm an
Okay.
outlier. When they're doing the assessment, like, oh, we're gonna get like 20 grand out of an average. And then like a Samboy, we're gonna get like maybe $500. You know what I'm saying? The season, right? You know. But the original thing was, folks' illusions falling with the mask. You go along with the illusion and put up the excuse me. You keep your mask on and go along with the illusion, as long as it's beneficial to you. You lose a little bit of benefits. You have nothing else to lose, and there's nothing scarier than a motherfucker that has nothing to lose and is angry. and knows that you have their stuff. And there's just been all these different factors that have come together have made people have to come to grips with this fact. So just like when Nietzsche was like God is dead and we killed him, I mean, to a certain degree, Hollywood is dead and we killed it. Mainstream media is dead and we killed it. Our political idols, to a certain degree, have certain cult of personality. We've killed them. And that's not to say those things won't happen again, but it's going to look completely different. It's going to have different standards, um, than before. That's why we have these movements that are like calling people out for doing shit, even if it's 20, 30 fucking years ago. Like you drugged and raped me, or you assaulted me, or you were racist or bigoted as fuck and disrespectful. Oh, it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. But the ramifications lived on. So, we need some type of restorative justice, you know. But yeah,
That reminds.
yeah,
Go
go
on.
ahead.
I was gonna
No, no,
say
that was it.
that reminds me of like the people that always go on saying that, oh man, I'm glad there was no social media when I was in high school because I'd done some shit. And I feel like, well, I wish there was social media back then because I would like to find out what shit you did.
Yes, yes,
And I
yes.
feel like that's how the CEOs are with their companies, where it's like, oh man, I'm glad there's no Twitter, and now Twitter's here, and now we can find out what the fuck have you been up to.
Mhm. No, that's exactly it. Like I think about like I think about that. I was edgy as anybody else, and I'm not mad at uh, it's like I understand the thrill of pushing the edge of the boundaries of good taste and social conformity and all that good stuff. Um, but once again, it's that we're finding edginess is you can say edginess is dead and we killed it. you know um Not to say that there's not going to be any edginess going forward, or flagrancy is another word that I hear being used, but that it's going to have different boundaries. It's going to have a different set of conditions, and now you're not going to be able to just get away with simply saying, "Oh, relax, it's just a joke." It's like, no, you're going to need to be a little more sophisticated in your delivering. Either you're going to have to be able to know how to hide it better, or you're going to have to be able to slip in nuance and different angles, but still make it snappy and quick and shit and quotable. Um,
And I feel like with whenever someone brings up Blazing Saddles, they make it seem like we're getting more sensitive, and it's like, no, they just did it better.
yes, yeah, yeah, exactly. Because they're so stuck on a lot of these people, and this is another thing I've talked about in one of my earlier podcasts,
Yeah.
because I did stand up, right? And I was only active in stand up for a couple of years, but I'm somebody who's always with my friends and just always attempted to be funny and make jokes and whatnot. So it's pretty natural, right? And I still try to keep that to a certain degree in the different content I create. And so and this is a conversation that has not died, because as people have changed and certain groups have spoken up and said that, hey, it's not that we don't appreciate funniness, but did you realize that there's this other dynamic to it? That there are some people who use these jokes as vehicles to as a temperature check, to be like basically they're trying to see how much you agree with their real socio-political views under the guise of humor. And so, with the rise of Trump and the rise of like the alt right and the rise of these new generation of motherfuckers who know how to stealthily pass their ideas, it makes us on the other side that are opposed to that also have to step our game up. They've stepped their game up at the end of the day, and we need to do the same. But that's how it goes. It's just like how the police or whatever, they get new surveillance technology. So as a criminal, you have to find better ways of hiding your stuff and staying off the radar. And it's just a cat and mouse game, you know.
That reminds me of the Batman line of escalation.
Which won't remind me. I'm not too familiar.
It's from Batman Begins when he's talking about, what about escalation? Batman's like, escalation. He's like, well, someone who wears a Kevlar suit, you get a armor piercing bullets. You
Mhm.
dress up like a bat, and this guy, and he brings out the card of Joker. He's like, oh, he's got a taste of theatrics. It's the whole escalation of like, you get better at catching me, I'm gonna get better at avoiding you.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And that's the game. And that's the game until one of you takes the other person out or makes the other one so marginalized that no matter how much they kick and scream, it doesn't mean anything.
I really hope it's a ladder
Yeah.
for the
Well,
bad guys.
Well, the thing is that like that's kind of why the reason we're in this position now, because you had like the generation of people who were around for like the 60s and 70s and stuff, And they made a lot of monumental changes and a lot of great stuff that needed to happen. But I feel like a lot of people in those spaces, liberal and left wingers, kind of said, "Well, we got past these big hurdles, and rubbed their hands and just went, all right, our work here is done." And those following were kind of like the Generation Xers, and then onward were kind of like, "Hey, we're still kind of fucked up over here." Uh, and as a matter of fact, it seems like things are starting to get worse with this, like with like Nixon and Reagan and the Southern Strategy and all this, and then the third way liberalism and shit. Um, all that shit. But no, but I feel like that's the problem, is that, like, because people talk about, oh, we used to get along so well, everything used to be so cool. Well, we were ignoring shit. We weren't asking these questions, or it was a lot easier to just brush it under the rug. But now we have so much evidence in video and audio. We have so much data and research, and we have so much testimony, right? And then people are already cynical and nihilistic as fuck. So then you actually give them validation for the way that they feel, and and it's like, what do you expect them to do? And it's like, some people, what we're seeing now is a backlash of people whom they for so long were able to get away with just shushing you, with just saying, be quiet, you're not, you can't, or prove it. And now that we can prove it, and they can't use that excuse anymore, now it's like, well, finders keepers, you're gonna have to come and take it from me.
Yeah, no, well put, and terrifying.
Yeah, it is, and it is, but in the end, it's all better for us to recognize just how high the stakes are, as opposed to just going around being like, oh, somebody else will take care of it, or things will be better to, or it what was the thing they were saying for kids that were scared of coming out? It gets better, and it's like, no, actually, it doesn't just get better. Sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. Sometimes you don't know if you're the person who's going to be like the martyr or the sacrificial lamb, before things get better. And I know this is something that it wasn't one of your questions, but it's something I brought up before, is that it's this romanticization of martyrdom. Like, we look back and be like, oh, so and so was so high, and they died, and it's like, oh wow, this, blah blah blah, this shouldn't have happened, and they're a hero and everything, and it's just like, but their supporters and everything weren't even there to support them, or sponsor them, or they weren't responsible and disciplined enough to make sure all these other things were in order so that they could live a long, prosperous life. A lot of people who were activists and who we see as being responsible for moving the needle on so many conversations and issues died poor, alone, and scared for their lives. You know what I'm saying? And
a lot of them didn't want to. They didn't volunteer to be a martyr. That's
yeah,
they just wanted to exist.
exactly, exactly, and yeah, and now more and more people are just recognizing that they were not able to exist under the system as it was, and now they're being proven that they're right, and everybody's kind of going in every direction because there's a vacuum of leadership. We have a crisis of leadership and direction.
Have you seen the documentary on Hulu, Batman and Bill?
I have not.
It's all about how Bob Kane took credit for creating Batman and would not let Bill Finger get his name on any fucking thing of Batman. And
Ooh.
when Bill Finger, because Bill Finger was just an artist that wants to create art, and he didn't want the fame that Bob Kane wanted.
Okay.
So he was cool about just making this comic book. And then finally, when Batman got bigger and bigger and bigger, he's like, "Hey, I don't need all the money, but could you at least like put my name on something? Because I would like to brag that I did something for Batman."
Right.
And Bill Finger and Bob Kane and DC was the DC Comics. They were like, you know what? It would ruin our narrative, so we can't do that. And one of my friends, when I told him about this documentary and the story, he said that he doesn't feel like fighting for Bill Finger because Bill Finger didn't fight for himself. And I told him, why should people have to fight for themselves? Why can't we help them if they're not a fighter?
Yeah.
Here's an artist that's just making art. Come on, we can help him.
Yeah, it's well, see, and the thing is that I agree with you. But then there's a quote from Stokely Carmichael that I remember that kind of speaks to the other point, the other side of the coin, which is, the quote is, "Nonviolence only works on an enemy with a conscience." So then So then the example you gave of like, oh, why should an artist have to be a fighter? Well, because there's gonna be motherfuckers like Bob Finger, or excuse me, not Bob Finger,
Bob Kane.
but Bob Kane.
Yeah.
Because you have to take into account for your own self-preservation the ability to do that, or excuse me, the possibility of somebody like that. Like it's the same thing when I look at these musicians and I look at their think about their contracts they sign and stuff, and it's just like you know you so much want to feel for the artist and be like, man, this is really fucked up in principle, even though it was legal and stuff. But at the same time, when you go back and you listen to people talk about it, they're just like, oh, I didn't want to worry about that. I just wanted to be the artist and just chill back with, saying the groupies and just get high and stuff. But it's just like, look, I understand the indulgence. I understand, you struggled so hard in your life just to, develop your identity. You don't have to worry about all this blah, 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 blah. But it's just like, but then you're leaving yourself open to being used up by these people who don't share your moral code. You can't, it's not, at a certain point, it's naive to go about in the world assuming that everybody else shares the same idea of right and wrong as you do. We can talk all day about what people should and shouldn't do, but if you're going to survive, you're going to have to worry about what people actually do to every extreme and protect yourself.
And that's why we have to be actively anti-racism, is because in a perfect world, like, okay, because I was thinking about, have you seen the new Sonic movie?
I have not. I've seen clips and stuff.
I haven't seen it either. I want to see it. It looks like it could be good. And I kept thinking about how Jim Carrey, I get his casting. He's great as Eggman. Every scene I've seen him in, it looks phenomenal. James Marsden, I like his acting. He's great. But I don't think that we need another white guy being in his role. I don't think his role was that crucial to the movie.
I don't know the dynamics, of it, and so I don't know the dynamics and stuff of it. But at the same time, I was kind of like, well, I've always thought Sonic was the star, and I thought maybe like his human would kind of just, or the human would just kind of be like a sidekick or whatever. So in that respect, yeah, it's like maybe that character wasn't necessary, and then if they're necessary, why not at least throw in somebody that's different, unique?
Correct.
At least a different face. It almost sounds like we're asking for tokenism because it's like, well, y'all struggle so hard to give representation. Will you at least give us a token? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As fucked up as that sounds, but no, it just goes to show like how deeply embedded expectations are, or because we also got to remember that it's not that U.S. The film studios and whatnot are catering less and less and less to Americans. It's moving more so over to catering to Chinese aesthetics and cultural.
That's a fair point.
And the thing is that China, even though they have their own storied history, a lot of it does include this praise of white people. This putting of white, not just white people, but whiteness on a pedestal, because they have their own issues with colorism and the different ethnic minority groups within China, which I don't know if it's just dozens or even hundreds, probably hundreds of thousands, different groups and stuff that get that. When you think of Chinese, you just always think of a skinny, very fair skinned, individual with certain features, because that's what they present, that's what they promote. So it's yeah, so that's an interesting thing. That's the thing about that. But I don't know. It's like, where's that line between tokenism and representation? And to me, what I look at it as, and this is more so obvious, like in the politics and commentary, is you could have 10 white people in a room and they all have completely radical ideas about stuff, and then you could also have a person of every single color of the rainbow, and they all agree. They're all culturally, not monogamous, but what's the word I'm looking for? Homogenized. Not monogamized, homogenized.
I like monogamized though. It sounds like that thing from the Muppets, the monogamized. No.
Monogamized. That's a deep cut, baby. That's a deep cut.
But homogenized.
Homogenized, yeah. But that's but it's like that's the dynamic, in that respect. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting just to see what happens with films and stuff going forward. Is it gonna completely start catering to these interests that are keeping these studios on the U.S. Afloat, but have nothing to or completely detached from Yankee culture, which I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. It'll because then it's just going to leave the field open for uh, people to redefine what American culture really is, or Yankee culture. I try not to just say American because you got Canada, you got Mexico, you got all the different Latin countries and stuff that are also part of the Americas.
Honestly, I haven't heard that terminology of Yankee culture. I think I'm going to do it from now on because it also
Take it.
pisses me off when someone says "Make America Great." I'm like, there's more to America than the U.S., right? Like,
And hell, even beyond, and even then, when they say that, they usually just mean the continental U.S. They don't even
correct.
think about. They don't even think about. They don't even think about Alaska or Puerto Rico or Hawaii most of the time, or even
Yeah.
Samoa. You got to forget we have the Samoa Islands and whatnot.
So a lot of times I'll go further to rewrite the sentence so I can say United States in a way that sound. I can't say United Statesian. That's
Yeah.
silly. But Yankee, I'm like, huh, all right, no, I'm always a fan of when I hear another term that I like. I'm like, all right, cool. Well,
Hell yeah, man, take that shit, cause I
it's
started
good.
using it after. Yeah, cause I started using because I had an interest in so and then we'll have to start getting back to your questions because now we're just going all over the damn place.
No, no,
Uh,
all over the damn place is a good thing because these are important topics. I like all over this damn place.
Hell yeah. Um, but real quick, it's one of the reasons why I started doing that is for the last I guess 5 years or so, 4.5 years, I have been playing in what's Brazilian drum groups, which are referred to as baterias.
Hmm.
Um, and so naturally, I'm meeting people of all different backgrounds. Not even all of them are Latin, but even then, it's like you got Peruvians, you got Brazilians, you got Mexicans, you got what I'm saying all this stuff. And then outside of that, you have people who you got like Europeans, you got like people Africans, you got different Asian groups and whatnot, right? So and they all have an appreciation for like Brazilian culture and stuff, right? And and it's once again it's shaping out my idea of what it means to be an American and the ways in which we do compare and contrast with all these different people. Because like real quick history lesson, Brazil and the United States are kind of like complete opposites in terms of like how they were founded. So they're both colonial states, right? They both had large indigenous populations that were wiped out by European settlers and whatnot, and made way for transatlantic slavery, transatlantic slave uh, trade.
That's a
Yes,
hell of a lot of syllables.
it is, it is, and in the United States, the least amount of slaves were brought here. And Brazil had the most amount of slaves. Brazil was the last nation to outlaw slavery. The
Uh,
United States, they weren't first, but we had a huge civil war to kind of settle that shit, right? And the thing is that when you talk to them and you look at their culture and whatnot, like we have a Black is Beautiful movement that's been around for since the '60s and whatnot. They just barely had that in the last couple of decades. Their understanding and how much they embrace their Blackness and stuff is completely different because in their political power, even though Black people are only 13% of the population, we have outstanding presence in many different fields, including political power, right? Brazil, they're the majority of the population, and they are nowhere to be found in almost any seats of power.
oh my God.
But they love bringing them out. But they love bringing them out to show off, how sexy and exotic and attractive, they are. Keeping up that vision of Brazil, which initially was part of the reason I was interested because I was just listening to like bossa nova, the real like loungy, saying soft, love, which I still love. It and it's still good music, but you also got to remember at the same time, while that music was being made, they were living under a military dictatorship. So you either made music that didn't approach those issues at all, or you were like a Caetano Veloso or a Gil Gilberto, where you were making whatever music and then you started radicalizing as a college student, but then under threat of death and shit, you got kicked out of the country. But then you created the wave of like radical thought in artistry and politics that would shape the country to this day. And as a matter of fact, Gilberto Gil, who is a full like Black Brazilian and shit, he is I guess like the cultural representative for Brazil and whatnot. So he's one of the few who has like a real seat of power there. But it's been a long, saying damn struggle. But in any way, the point I was trying to get to is as my understanding of their history and the culture became different and began to see the ways in which we're similar and dissimilar, I was like, wow, they're Americans too in their own way. Peruvians are Americans too. Canadians are Americans too. Samoans are Americans too. And it's just all these different variations. And we've been taught, or we've been trying to groomed to think that there is one idea of what an American is. And it's like, no, it's like I'm a Yankee, and I have no problems with that. That's what it is. It's continental United Statism. That's what it is.
Now, do you have a specific place where you did you come up with the term Yankee for people in the U.S.?
No, no, oh no, of course not. I mean, Yankee is a old.
No, no. As far as like the current use, when you started using it
Oh,
in
I'm sorry. I'm
conversation,
sorry. No, 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 yeah,
I know it's an old word. I'm just
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's honestly, I probably heard, no, because the Latin folks, they don't usually, because the thing is, even like the white Latin folks, they don't refer to it as Yankees and stuff. I think that was just me. I think that was just kind of me, like trying to be tongue in cheek. Because Yankee is usually was used more as like an insult or kind of recognized like this really like ugly American.
yeah, because
But I don't
like I think
consider.
I always hear like British people do it in movies, say, "Oh, that
Yeah,
damn Yank."
yeah, these uncultured, saying, Yankee stuff. But I wear it as like a source of pride. Like, no, I'm a Yankee, but I don't feel closed off and ignorant to that stuff. But as far as like, yeah, I think, yeah, I can't remember anybody specifically saying that because like the even white people from Latin countries, even though they look like every other white folk out here, they refer to them as gringos. And it's like,
Okay.
don't you know you're the gringo of your fucking respective country? But like once again, that's another thing. They don't have white guilt. They haven't been groomed. They haven't had the white guilt history and shit, and political correctness that we've had. We've been breaking y'all down for decades now. They haven't been putting in the same work. They different conditions, you
Fuck.
know. But that's just that's the world and learning to engage with people where they are, not where they're at. But as far as I know, yeah, I'm the only one who really uses like Yankee in that way.
I think I'm going to adopt it. For example, I was talking to my friend Jasmine the other day, and I had mentioned that I was talking to someone about that stupid movie, The Plandemic, that came out,
Uh-huh,
and
uh-huh.
I was arguing with one of my friends, and then her friends came at me, and I mentioned that they were a privilege of Karens. I use that
Mhm.
term privilege as a
Yes.
ter- as a group of Karens, and she laughed. She's like, I've never actually heard someone use it in a conversation, and I was like,
Yeah.
I think it's great. When I see a meme and I like the terminology, I'll adopt it.
So, dude, that's what you said. It's a what of Karens? A privilege
A
of Karens?
privilege of Karens. Yeah,
Oh God, like yeah, like a pride of lions or a murder of crows and shit.
correct.
Yeah, I
I
like. No,
saw
I love that.
that was in a meme. I won't take credit for it. I'll try to find out who started it, but I saw that in a meme and I was like, deal. I like that.
Just always be like, hey, random ass Twitterer, and when that random ass Twitterer comes and tries to claim this shit, you're like, all right, I guess you get a cookie.
Here you go.
Uh, but see, the thing is that's also the beauty of like the of making things quotable, because sometimes you can win people over or at least get away with making fun of them if you make it not so much about humiliating them, but making a very making that kind of connection there, because even you saying privilege of Karens, it's like on one hand you're calling them Karens, but you're also approaching it in a way that's kind of flippant and dismissive, because it's kind of goofy to refer to that, to genuinely refer to them as a privilege, saying of Karens. So it's kind of like this misdirection, so it's like you leave room open for somebody to hate you or to respect you, you know. People
I
people respect cleverness. People respect cleverness even from their enemies. Some people like it's just what is what it is.
That is very true. I've I have a hate stalker that likes to share my comics with insulting
Mhm.
me, And I'm just like, go for it, man. I don't care about you sharing my stuff. Do it. Like
Yeah,
it's the same thing when whenever I hear about people buying comic books just to burn them, I'm like, I
you
got your
bought 'em.
money, man.
Yeah,
Like,
well, you bought them. You bought them. Or any of these, boycotts and shit. Like, oh yeah, I bought this. I'm gonna destroy it and stuff. And it's just like you destroyed your own property. It's
that
one
was your
thing to never
money.
buy. Yeah, it's one thing to never go spend your money there again. But it's like, at least, keep the damn, what I'm saying, keep the damn Keurig or keep the damn, whatever the fuck, and just use it till it's done, and then just go buy from somewhere else. But
Correct.
it's that
Don't
perform. It's that, yeah, it's virtue
don't don't
signaling.
don't buy the thing and don't talk about the thing, and hopefully it'll disappear. But the moment you start talking about it, you gave it a platform. You're advertising.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
this guy is a hate stalker, and he because my comic strip is called Been Better, and he called it a bedwetter, and I was like, okay, I like that. that
How
that was
clever.
that was the one time he was actually clever, and I was like, okay, all right, fair. No, that's good. I like that a lot.
Bro, I just agreed to do a debate with. He's not like a hate stalker. He's somebody that I met doing stand up, but we have many back and forths and whatnot on Facebook and everything. He follows the group and stuff. And the thing is that like I try not to completely humiliate people, but it's like I do have to shut shit down,
Mhm.
and I continuously shut his shit down. Sometimes my comebacks get more than his original posts and stuff, and I'm just like, damn, why doesn't this dude fucking block me? Yeah, he must really like actually enjoy this shit. And so then we had another back and forth this morning, and then at the end, I was like, dude, this is great. We got to have a debate sometime. And he was like, I'm down. And I was just like, yeah, I'll be in touch. But it's so fucking hilarious because some people that's what they are in it for. They are in to just either be a thorn in your side or be like, hey, look at me, look at how much I hate you. Um, but then they also know so much about you. It's like, damn, you sound more dedicated than my than fans or the people who said that they really like care about my shit. My friends who said that they were gonna listen to my songs and stuff, and then it sees it has no plays, and then you tell me I listen to all five of your songs and they're all trash. And it's like, you listen to all five of my songs though. Thank you.
I I know exactly how you feel. You bring up an obscure character I drew, and I'm like, hey, you pay
Mhm.
attention.
You care. You really care.
I mean, you hate me and you say mean things, but thank you.
Yeah. Keep coming out to support me more than my closest loved ones and shit. So I mean, yeah, that's yeah, man.
Speaking of marketing, I'm just curious about this because I've been seeing it, in a lot of corporations. They're doing this, and it feels like whenever there's like kind of like a social language or a trending topic, a lot of companies try to adopt it. When Pride Month comes along, everyone has to be rainbows. Even corporations where you're just like, you don't fucking care, don't give me that. And the same thing goes with Black Lives Matter and the protests that a lot of companies are coming in saying they support. Do you think that any of these companies, or which companies do you think are really legitimate?
So excuse me. So yeah, on that issue of just like appropriation and just using stuff as a marketing, using tokenism and whatnot. At the end of the day, it's like what this really comes down to is like, oh, does their intent match the impact of their actions? And at this point, I'm kind of like, I could give a fuck about what their intent is. I could care if all of these companies were just bullshitting and just using this to give themselves good PR because the impact, what it's saying is that we won the argument. What it's saying is that we pushed y'all so fucking far through all your bitching and moaning and your desire to uh, preserve, saying certain cultural expectations, and we shifted you. We moved you. And so, while I never expect them to raise the white flag or say that we gave up and shit, it's like, no, you motherfuckers lost. As far as the culture war, you lost again, and now we're just trying to finish you up with the political war. But to me, all that says is that like we won. Our argument won. That's why you have all these photo ops with these leaders and these police doing this cringy bullshit of like, yeah, we kneel in solidarity with you, and we were wrong about Colin Kaepernick, and we were wrong about this shit. It's like, whatever. Put your money where your mouth is. Um, put your money where your mouth is. That's all I really care about. What's the impact of all the shit you're gonna say? So as far as like that stuff like Pride or Black Lives Matter or ending domestic violence and stuff like that. Ultimately, as long as all these corporations are only going to be caring about spending money and getting my money, the least they could do is show that they acknowledge my existence and respect me at the very least. And now we have it happening, up and down the board. And now it's really on us to hold them accountable. And I just keep asking, what are you going to do next? We need to be pushing them, being like, no, here's what you're going to do next. Here's how you're going to show what the fuck you're going to do. Here's how we're going to actually make you follow through and make sure that there's some positive impact to all this chitter chatter that y'all throw around when it's convenient. But ultimately, it's like they're flying our flag. They're using they're taking their platforms and using it to flying our flag on their space. And to me, it's hard to look at that as anything other than a victory.
No, that's fair. I like that. I like it. It's just all right, cool. You tweeted. All right, let's see what else you got.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I like that. I only asked because I did see like Ben and Jerry's comment, and Ben and Jerry's has always been more on the activist side, like standing up for how they believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I compare that to what the other companies have said. Now, the other companies have said stuff more, professional. But I've always enjoyed the integrity of Ben and Jerry's, or at least what I've seen.
Right. No, exactly. You have those exceptions. You have those exceptions like those, who really live it and everything. But it's naturally to be skeptical about all these other ones because even if you do really want that, even if you really do want these things, you're being a CEO or a leader of a company doesn't mean you just do whatever the hell you want. Yeah, you get a nice paycheck, you get nice benefits, but that's as long as you keep the ship afloat or steering in an overall general direction. But if enough of the stakeholders or the other leaders in there decide, hey, you're not really fitting with the program, and then also you're legally obligated to meet certain financial expectations, then you got to go. It also just speaks to, excuse me, it also just speaks to we shouldn't be expecting too much from these companies, too much from these companies because of the infrastructure that keeps them together. It's like, yeah, it's good that we push them to this degree and keep trying to push them to do other stuff, but we also got to realize that the reason why they exist or in those positions is because they don't represent a threat to the machine. We do. And so that means we can't just be satisfied with whatever it is that they're willing to offer or put on the table. We have to bring the table to them and be like, you're gonna take a fucking seat, or we're gonna sit you down.
See, I like that interpretation of like, because too many people complain online about cancel culture, and it's like I love cancel culture. I love the idea of like telling people, hey, this company's a dick. Let's not give them money.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is the people who often complain about that, they're also the quote unquote free market.
Yeah.
Let the market speak. Let the market speak for itself. Nobody wants to read a comic with gay characters. But the whole reason why they're doing this is because millions of people asked for it. No, well, that's just because they want to be PC. It's like, oh, so it's just you just keep moving the goalposts wherever you need to in order to feel right. You just don't want to accept that maybe your way of doing things wasn't that what you thought of as normal and standard maybe was not normal and standard, and that it's being overshadowed by something else.
It's interesting that you brought up comic books because one of my friends asked a question, and I want to ask this question. It's not even a question on my list. I just thought this is always an interesting question I think about. Which group do you think is more diverse, comic book writers or comic book artists?
Oh shit, writers or artists? Oh damn. I'm gonna say my bias is leaning towards writers.
Writers.
Yeah.
I said artists.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the company is more comfortable about a white voice leading the way of the plot of the characters and letting any artist draw it.
You know what? You know what? I see your point. Well, then wait a minute. Wouldn't that mean? Wait. So then, do artists not typically? Well, I guess I look at it like this. Do in that space, are writers usually not connected to the drawing of the artist and vice versa? Is that how stratified it is? Because I would think that normally if you create a character, you also create the story behind them, and vice versa. But is it that divided?
As far as like, I mean, it depends on what comic is being written because I know some comic books, for example, the Ghostbuster comic book, the artist is a lot more involved in the script writing
Mm,
because they get to like, because they were doing it where they introduced Louis Tully's brother, and Louis Tully's brother was Eugene Levy, and I asked whose idea was that, and they said it was Dan Shoney, the artist, because he's a huge Ghostbuster nerd. But
mhm.
I see a lot of times, as far as comic books are concerned, there'll be like a script, and they'll tell what kind of characters, what race the characters are, what they look like, what their sexuality is, and the artist is just there. So you'll see diversity in the background, and the CEOs are okay with that. They'll say, "Oh, well, cool. See what we did? We have them in the background." But then the main characters are still going to be white, cisgender, and heterosexual.
Yeah, you know what? No, that's interesting you say that because when I think about it, my bias is that oh, creating a character or something that looks good is more so about like aesthetics, whereas when you write, you're necessarily creating a framework from which everything else extends, including the character's image. So I guess that's just my bias and like where I was coming from at it. But when you explain it like that, it does make a lot more sense that like, hey, look at our diverse group of artists, but we're not telling you that they basically had no choice in the characters that they had to draw in the scripts that they got to work on.
Now, I haven't actually looked at the statistics, and I'm trying to figure out where I would look. Like, it does DC Comics or Marvel Comics, the big ones, or any kind of comic books. Like, where are you going to find that statistic?
Mhm. It's one of those things, and see that's the tricky thing about that stuff is that it makes it easy for people to say, "Hey, we're not discriminatory. We're not, saying, blah 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 blah." But then again, it goes to that like that tokenism, element where you have all these different faces, all these people with different backgrounds, but either they all think the same, or you're forcing them into creating content that fulfills, one point of view. It's tokenism, but from different ends.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I that's why whenever I go to comic book conventions, it's usually going to be there to give money to the artist alley because that's where I'm going to find the diverse group of writers and artists that are making their own comic book. It's not led by stockholders or whatever the fanboys are raging against, that sort of thing. They're just making their stories that they feel passionate about.
Okay. Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's what's up. No, it's interesting you say that because, like you said, I'm not really familiar with the comic books world,
Hmm.
but those in the animated world. But at the end of the day, these are still offsprings of the general culture, and so you see the same tendencies manifest in the comic book world, and in the music industry, and theater. You know what I'm saying? And in everything, because that's the bedrock, that's the foundation from which they all come from.
Now, speaking of comic books,
Mm.
which X-Men would you love to interview on your podcast or have a conversation with on your podcast?
I would say Mystique.
Mystique? Nice.
Mystique. And the reason why I said that is because, you know, um, she's one of the few characters that I know. I know she's a long time character. She's been around for a minute. Um, and obviously she's a shapeshifter. Um, and the thing is that when there's a certain so I know this from a different comic with the Watchmen and whatnot, but the character Doctor Manhattan, right? When he undergoes this shit that he goes through, he has a complete like detachment, a completely different relation to humanity and carbon-based life forms as a result of that shit, right? Mystique, not only is she, she looks the way that she does physically, even though she could blend in if she wants to, she also has this ability knowing that like I can be whatever a person needs me to be to pass or fail, what I'm saying, by them, right? And so it would be interesting to talk to somebody who is able to that's meshed in those different extremes of where I can make myself the most hated, okay, where I can be the most hated or loved person, and literally change myself from different, in those respects, for whoever I'm engaging with. I think that's, obviously it's not the most powerful thing. It's not the most like, crazy thing to affect the world, but it's when it comes down to like understanding the human mind and what motivates people and shit. I feel like that she could be. probably just as informative as like a Dr. Xavier or like one of the mind reading, mutants.
And I think it's also about how she holds herself, because if she turns into a senator and
Hmm.
she has posture that's hunched over and like she's walking timidly,
Hmm.
she's not going to be able to invade the area because she's going to stand out. She has
Right.
to walk the walk to be able to be the character.
No, yeah,
That's
exactly. It's oh my God, yeah. It's like you have to have a deep, you have to have a deep understanding of human perception. You have to have a deep understanding of the human condition. You have to have a deep understanding of all these different contexts to be able to do what she does. Because besides her ability to transform and whatnot, I don't think she has like any other like special like powers. She's just like otherwise she just has good combat skills, you know. Yeah, but
yeah.
she's not like she's not immortal. She can't take an extra amount of like physical damage as far as I understand. So in many ways she's just like a more advanced uh humanoid, or she I guess you can see her as like a next stage, a more developed stage of humanity, a more complex phase of humanity. Because think about if we all could shape what if we all could shape shift, like ultimately we knew who the person was at their core, but that the presentation you could turn yourself from man to woman, child, all that different shit, saying throughout the day. Then how would it would make our interactions so much more complex and layered, and you wouldn't be able to get away with the same, assumptions. You'd have to be a little more sophisticated in the way you think about other human beings and yourself.
And are just knowing the subtle characteristics of the person that we're talking to be able to recognize them.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah,
That
Mystique, with either Mystique or yeah, Mystique.
I love your answer, Mystique. That's because it made me think of things of the character that I never even thought about. Because I've seen her change in character, but there's still so much more to becoming that character than just the physical attributes.
Dude, and the thing is that like you say that, and this is the thing that's made me come to respect the acting a lot more,
Hmm.
because I used to I used to like I've always appreciated actors and whatnot, but I consider that medium like lower on the totem pole, as opposed to like illustrative or director and whatnot. But then you see certain artists whom, even when they don't make a lot of grand physical changes and stuff, like they change their posture, they change the tone of their voice, they blah 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 blah, and it's just like it takes years for you to develop your posture and years for you to develop your voice and stuff, and for people to be able to like change that stuff, saying through multiple projects throughout the year for years on end, or months and years on end in some cases. Um, there's no less artistry in that than producing an album or writing a script and directing a film or creating a comic strip. So, um, uh, understanding just how much more involved it is than just memorizing a script and going in and making certain facial expressions and standing on a fucking square. There really is a lot more to acting on whether it's a Broadway and theater or if it's a film.
That's why a lot of times character actors are my favorite, just because they have to be so different. Like Gary
Yeah.
Oldman is still someone I put up really high up there. Um, So this is the end of the podcast episode. I feel like we can talk forever, and I look super forward to COVID being over, because I realize how much I enjoy your company and talking about anything. It's been a blast.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I enjoy this as well too. I'm used to doing like hours long podcasts, so this feels really brief. It's like a snack for me. But no, but same thing. It's made me really like really see like who is it that really brings value every day to my life, or who do I really appreciate engaging with. And yeah, you definitely are a person, and so many other people that I've discovered, and it's mainly just been from putting myself out there and just putting my own views and saying this is what I think, and then there are a lot more people who feel that and are getting inspiration and getting value out of that shit. You know?
And I look forward to every post that you do on Facebook. It's very politically fueled, and learning about Kimba was interesting. And
Oh
I
boy.
highly recommend everyone to follow you on every social media, the thing that you have, which is like, what were your social media things?
Oh, sorry. So
I know that was a horrible setup. That was a horrible setup.
so as far as like my name, my personal profiles and stuff, it's L Samboy. So EL and then SAMBOI, and then the pod, and that's on different platforms. And then the podcast, it's all relative podcast, or on Instagram, it's IAR_podcast. But if you can find me on one of those platforms, then you'll be able to see my links to all the other ones. So if you find me one place, you'll find me everywhere.
And what words of wisdom do you want to give the listeners?
I want to say, and I'll try to answer real quick. One of the questions I know you wanted to ask was,
Okay.
I know a lot of protests and social activism and stuff going on, and that's great. However, my advice to you is really lock down the privacy and data tracking settings on all your social media, all your devices. And if you know that you're not going to stop posting really wild, crazy shit that could possibly be used against you in court, then you need to make that a completely separate account that has nothing to do with your personal stuff. And then like detag yourself and stop doing all those location check-ins and stuff. So start being consider the fact that it doesn't matter what rules and laws or codes of conduct are accepted, that we are in warfare at this point, and anybody can be a victim on any side. So just don't hand over your information and data on a silver platter.